What's up? Welcome to Tales Tomorrow. I am Morrow, your storyteller for today. With me I have some more RPG horror stories. I saw that in some of the comments, somebody was even accusing me of not being a lover of soup or a soup owner. Bitch, I love soup. My favorite soup ever is borscht, a Russian beet soup. It's red, it goes so good with sour cream on top. Chef's kiss right on that beet. It is amazing, it is wonderful. My grandma, or how in Russian we would say my babushka, would always make it, and oh my god, it was so good. Anyway, let's get some RPG horror stories for today. DM made my character an NPC warlock after I ruined his story. Level 3, custom D&D world, 8th game in. Me, typical warrior soldier. Lawful evil, do whatever it takes to get the job done. Clean up the mess afterwards, maybe. Longsword, heavy crossbow, passion for kicking enemies in the face. Terrible wizard, main attack was a sling and staff because he took no damage cantrips. Did have spells to keep his robes clean and his breath fresh. Best described as neutral stupid. Paladin, lawful good, protector of the innocent, tank type, sword and board. Funny, not too serious. Human, hated undead. Female tabaxi rogue, played it for the memes, chaotic stupid. Loved whining about how the paladin never let her have any fun. DM, very serious about running a serious campaign when the paddle player and I were the only ones really taking the game seriously. Okay, I'm already seeing a little bit of a problem here with the DM. If they want to play a very serious game seriously and everybody else is just kind of goofing around, being lawful dumb and just being silly and goofy and stuff, I feel like that might be a mesh of the kind of games that DM is expecting to run versus what the players are expecting to run. If you want to play a serious campaign, you got to make sure the players are on board to play serious characters. If you want it to be mainly a lot of serious moments or serious themes going on. If you want it to be grim dark, everybody got to be in the mood for it. If you want to play like some sort of chaotic evil party, everybody got to be in the mood for it too. Everybody got to be on the same page for the tone that you want to set for the campaign. If you have one couple players that want to be chaotic and stuff, and some players are just doing whatever, and this player's doing this and that is that, and DM has some crazy expectation that where you have to follow the specific set of rules that nobody else is adhering to, then it's just a recipe for disaster. This is a game that was going to fall apart sooner or later. Bottom of Wizard's Tower on a mission to rescue the adopted daughter of a local priest who had been kidnapped by an evil wizard cult. We had fought our way past mercenaries, traps, and we were at the bottom of a staircase facing a room full of 10 cultists plus the cult leader who commanded 4 skeletons. The room was set up in a demonic ritual to summon a demon that would serve the cult and spread the influence of hell across the world. Several rounds in, the cult leader was still performing the ritual while we tried to force our way past all his minions. He had anointed the girl with unholy oil. Don't ask me where he got that from, and I realized he was about to kill her to complete the spell. My turn. There was no way for me to get him. He had a visible glowing shield spell out protecting him. I looked down on my sheet and thought there was no way I could possibly stop him in time. Then I saw a little note I had scribbled in a margin with the demon name. Talestomorrowdnd, nemesis of Archdevil Tirsia, who runs a cult at Stone Spire. We'd send the rogue to buy the location of the tower we were fighting in from the cult of Tirsia. I rolled a 16 to fire my heavy crossbow. DM says it one hit because of his shield spell. I say, oh no, you don't understand. I wasn't aiming at the cult leader. Then I stand up from the table and act out struggling to get a clear shot, realizing it was impossible, and instead aiming at the girl before, yelling, Tirsia, Archdevil of Sixth Ring, sin of avarice, maker of kings and fools, I offer you the sacrifice. Send forth your devil hounds to claim the soul of your enemies and drag them to your eternal vault, now and forever. Wow, that's actually low-key kind of metal. I mean, yeah, evil as hell, but also low-key kind of metal. You're using a torture sacrifice arena to not summon one type of devil, but a different type of devil, offering the girl that is at the altar as an actual sacrifice. That is crazy. I mean, metal as hell, especially if you just go for like old holds barred and kind of like an evil character. God damn, that is evil. My thinking was, if she dies at a botched sacrifice by someone who isn't even a wizard or a cult priest, she can't be used to unleash the demon, right? Well, it turns out DM had planned a whole big campaign where we were supposed to chase down the demon and the cult leader after they made their escape. It was the only time in real life I ever made a DM literally stare at me slack-jawed. To his credit, he did roll with it in a moment. The ritual circle burst open and hellhounds devoured the cultist along with the cult leader. We had a good bit of roleplay where the paladin and I argued over the justification of what I had done, and we looted the tower. The end, so I thought. I get an email saying I shouldn't come to the next game. DM said I was unwelcome to come to the game after that, but it's a surprise for me as he needed a session to set it up without me around. Weird, but okay. So I agreed. Uh-oh, if a DM emails you saying you shouldn't come to the next game, you know what kind of vibes it gave me? The kind of vibes where like the weird creepy kid at school says, don't come to school tomorrow. That kind of vibe is like, whoa, what are they gonna do at the table? What are they gonna do to your character? What's going on? What's happening? What? Later I find out he told the other players I had been sick, played my character as an NPC, and had him ride off to visit his sick mother. They'll assume at the time that was just a way of excusing my character from the events of the session because I was absent. When I returned, he told me to make a new character, and that I had to be lawful good. He was no longer allowing evil player characters, tried to use the same plot he had before, but instead of chasing down the cult leader and a demon, we ended up hunting down my former character who was now a warlock serving the demon Tircia. Still not sure if this was a good storytelling or bad storytelling, but it squeaked me out of that he lied to everyone and tried to force me to play a lawful good character, so I just stopped showing up a few games later. Maybe I was the a-hole in the story, I can kinda see it from a point of view, but it just seemed like a red flag to me. Still don't know how to feel about it over a decade later. If a DM has a problem with you playing as an evil character, they should probably talk to you like specifically out of game and say that, hey, you being evil and this evil act that you're doing is not the kind of story that I want to run. I want to be able to do kind of, a couple of things here and there, but I sort of need the players to play characters that aren't going to be just summoning devils and such. But also, if I was the DM in this situation, I'll probably talk to the player and say, okay, so what if we go from here? I don't know if I'm comfortable with you playing as an evil character and doing more of these evil things. However, I'm going to make sure that what you've done from that last session is going to have great repercussions. So this is going to be a bit of a turning point. So in future, let's maybe cut down on the evil stuff. Let's maybe go more neutral stuff. But let's not do any more devil summonings because I had a whole thing planned out, but now we're going to have to rewrite it, which whatever. And then kind of go from there. You know what I'm trying to say? Like if the DM specifically had to sit down with you and talk to you about this instead of making like, don't show up to the game tomorrow and lie to the other players saying, oh, the player just got sick and stuff. I guess I'll just play him as an NPC. I guess, huh? Well, me and this other player talked about what he would do, and he would go off to find his sick mother or something, because that's weird. That's like performative nonsense. They try to deceive the party for the sake of deceiving them because they're telling your player one thing, but the other player is another thing. Why? Just have the player participate. Talk to the player. Find out what they, find out what they think. Come up with some ideas for them if you don't want to have somebody playing evil, but maybe you change things up to go from there on. Honestly, what I would have done is let the player stay as they are, maybe make him neutral instead of evil, don't make it greater repercussions for evil deeds and evil acts, and just use Tircia as this next demon that they're catching and trying to chase. Maybe the girl gets her body possessed by Tircia as part of the sacrifice, so that she's technically kind of still alive, but she's only alive because Tircia, this devil, archdevil, is like controlling her body and using it to puppeteer her. And she, it's kind of like maybe important to get her body back because at that point she could still be alive and you could still have a whole arc of chasing a devil, just a different devil this time around. I don't know, man. What do y'all think about this? What are your thoughts? I mean, yes, I get it. The DM probably should have clarified early on about the kind of campaign they want to run, and having a big hodgepodge of players being chaotic and goofy and stuff and even evil. If that's a problem, if that's a deal breaker for the DM, they probably should have talked about this way early on. It said some sort of standards and boundaries, or just said, no, player, you can't do that. That's an evil act. I'm not gonna allow you to be evil. This is not the kind of game we're running. Something that could be said in the moment. But DM chose to be like, okay, you shoot the girl, summon hellhounds, and continue forward, and then try to do the whole trickery stuff, which is weird. Honestly, it's weird. There should have been a lot more communication and clear expectations and boundaries set ahead of time for this game, primarily from DM to players, but also, I mean, just the way the DM handled himself, just not okay. You probably shouldn't have done an evil act, but also DM should have done what they done. Two wrongs to make a right, and at the end of the day, it probably best you left. Let's move on to the next story for today. Bad DM steals the ending of a final scene and throws away almost all PC's lore. It's been a while since I started participating in a homebrew campaign by a colleague of mine. We just had what would say is one of the worst RPG endings I've ever seen. Just letting you know that English is not my first language, so please excuse any mistakes that you see. Now here's some context. I started playing TTRPGs a few years ago. I've been one player and a game master, and honestly, I love both. The problem started when a college friend of mine mentioned in a random conversation that he was a game master, and we talked about it. Since then, he's been inviting me to participate in one of his RPGs for the last 6 months, and I always refused because I couldn't attend in person due to the distance and other difficulties I had. However, everything changed when he told me he had an opening in a Souls-like homebrew online TTRPG he'd been running for almost a year. From what he explained, a player had declined to participate at the last minute in the new season of his campaign, and he needed someone to fill her spot. Up to that point, everything was fine with me. Souls-like homebrew online TTRPG, why does that sound like a disaster recipe? Not these specific words by themselves, but this combination. Souls-like kind of implies it's going to be very punishing, like Dark Souls or any kind of other Souls-like games, you know, where you like go through like an RPG with a vague lore and stuff, and people being very cryptic and vague and stuff, and questing is not exactly well explained unless you look up a Wikipedia page ahead of time. We have the really good combat, but also you have very punishing bosses, and it's just like constant loop of basically you go to the boss, die, come back again, and keep doing this until you eventually succeed on a repeat ad nauseum. Now these sort of games work well as a video game, but as a TTRPG with all of its Souls-like mechanics, I don't think it would go well. If you have vague lore and cryptic conversations from NPCs, I don't think you're going to be able to divulge the information properly. If you have extremely punishing hardcore gameplay where it punishes you for making mistakes super badly to the point we gotta reset, I don't think that's going to translate well to a TTRPG. The exploration and the moody, gritty atmosphere could probably do it, depends on the kind of genre of game you're going for, but otherwise, I don't know, man. When I think of Dark Souls and TTRPGs, I don't think I've ever seen, I don't think I've ever heard of a Dark Souls themed TTRPG game that didn't go tits up and wasn't put on RPGHorrorStories. And I'm just assuming things, but I'm getting kind of bad vibes that this game is gonna crash. I created a character following the steps of the last player, as he requested. I made a human pyromancer who sought to end the darkness of the world after losing his mother during the invasion of his village, where he set fire to the place trying to defend against the attack with a torch, consequently killing her accidentally and dedicating his life to learning pyromancy. He praised the story and we moved on to the session. The problem started when I realized that basically everyone there was a beginner in TTRPGs. I'm not talking about 1 or 2 campaigns. Some are playing for the very first time in their lives, and that'll be more important later on. In short, overall the campaign lasted 2 months of confusing stories, linear paths, unfair fights. And when I say unfair, I mean you take 50 damage from this attack, you can't dodge, and if you complain, you lose your turn. I was constantly stressed by how arrogant all the NPCs were, and how all the enemies, without exception, laughed and talked about their superiority over the party. It got to a point where another player and I started constantly making jokes about it, like, yes, you're superior, like everyone else in the last 50 fights. Now laugh a little more while you can. It was clear that everyone there, being beginners, were more concerned with making a good impression and silently accepting what the DM said than anything else. And I completely understand them and hope they realize one day that TTRPGs aren't just pain and suffering like the DM made the entire campaign. I didn't judge and tried the best I could to not offer an unsolicited opinion about how the DM thinks and let him go on, but I constantly said to him how unfair it was and that I didn't expect it. I believe this is the one and only moment I can actually say called it. Actually, no, that's not the only moment. I don't want to gloat about saying like, you know, called it, haha. The game is going to be super punishing. When I think of Dark Souls or Souls-like games, I think punishing. Or characters being extremely cryptic and not being easily to cooperate with or communicate with in some various extent. I mean, characters themselves don't even have that many lines that explain things too much unless you start reading through a Wikipedia page when it comes to the Souls-like games or just anything at all. And when you try to translate those mechanics into a TTRPG, you need to do some heavy lifting on DM side of things to make sure things are still fair and balanced and actually enjoyable, because trying to make everything Souls-like games are there in case you want to play them. You shouldn't have to put that into a TTRPG where everything is just super difficult and you just take 50 damage and can't do anything about it. You just take 50 damage and that sucks, and if you complain about it, God forbid you decide to complain about it, you lose a whole ass turn because the DM is so insecure about their game and any sort of criticism that they can't handle it. They'll take away your turn if you dare to complain. That is I can't tell if that's just the hardcore elements of the game or insecurity. Anyway, the breaking point for me was the last session when we had to fight the final boss of the campaign, an evil entity that spreads darkness throughout the world, but not before fighting Artorias from Dark Souls and Sans. No joke, even I was surprised considering the atmosphere was quite serious and edge up to that point. Wow, a whole collaboration with Artorias from Dark Souls and Sans from Undertale? Okay, I don't want to insult anybody that likes characters like Sans or Papyrus or anybody from Undertale or anything, but the two universes couldn't be further from each other, right? They couldn't be further from each other. I get it if you want to play in some sort of like a Dark Souls fan fiction game. For sure, go for it. Have fun. That's completely okay. But It's like, let's say for example, it's like you enter into the arena and you expect like Ornstein and Smough, and suddenly Yoda is doing a collaboration with them or something. It just feels so left field, and it doesn't match the vibe of it whatsoever. It feels like it's your DM's personal fan fiction, and they're not even taking it seriously, or are only taking it seriously whenever it's convenient for them. But if they want to insert the little fan fiction moment, they will do so without completely caring for the integrity of the game. It's like if suddenly in my homebrew world of Eldrosia, I suddenly put in, oh, there's not chocobos, and look at that. Is that you stole it from Final Fantasy 14? It just would be weird and cringe, and I would never want to expose my players towards that sort of thing. I don't want my games to become a random fan fiction, unless that's the whole point of the game in the first place, is to be some sort of a fan fiction parody game where you can have silly moments. Because this just looks really jarring. I am jarred. I am greatly jarred by this. Some unfair damage here and there, and having our abilities completely cut off from part of the fight up until the end of the campaign. Then we came across a magma giant who simply destroyed my character's lore after revealing that he was the one who gave him the gift of fire, and that he was nothing more than an experiment, throwing away the part about him having spent years training for it, and his mother's death being accidental, something I constantly express and try to roleplay about. I got stressed, but gave up talking and just silently accepted the uninterruptible monologues, and yes, it was forbidden to interrupt him. He got very stressed about it. The constant NPC's taunt he made about me and how I was nothing to him, and that I couldn't do anything, just staying silent and enduring it because as a pyromancer, there was nothing I could do since my mana was depleted and he was made of magma. Yeah, no, 100%, this is DM's insecurity. If your DM gets so stressed out and just like spazzes out because they get interrupted during the epic monologue, that means that valuing their time being spent, and you guys are not participants, you're not players, you're participants, you're an audience, you can't talk, you can only listen to me, the DM, spouting this great thing that I wrote up or whatever, because I'm clearly the priority here. This is a DM with a lot of insecurities that just wants to run their fanfic whenever it's convenient for them. This game was doomed from the start. After all the fighting we had, the evil entity killed us in a monologue that I'm 99% sure was written by ChatGPT. Then we saved at the last second by Deus Ex Machina from a character in one of the PC's backstories that, by the way, was dead, and brought back at last second, even the player didn't feel good about. The NPC transformed us into super powerful beings. We attacked with everything we had, and again a monologue about how weak we were and that none of it mattered. Don't tell me it's gonna be some sort of like an ending of and you guys woke up in a shared dream or something. That'd be stupid. In the end, the NPC killed him and the world was consumed because of his death, literally ending. A detail is that none of the backstories were developed. One player even commented that everything I wrote was useless. He later told us in a call about his backstory that the DM never bothered to develop. We ended the campaign waking up all injured in a hospital in our real-life player versions. It all been a dream that happened in a car crash. Oh my god, that is even worse. You wake up as your IRL self in your world because your dream is isekai and everything was a dream. That is stupid. That is dumb as a bag of bricks. That is dumb as a bag of bricks slamming on a bag of dicks. That is dumb. This is stupid. This is brain dead dumb. There were no words to describe my feelings after he invited everyone for another session in a completely new world, but with the same characters. You know what I would feel? Absolute disgust, disappointed. Actually, I wouldn't feel anything. I'd feel an immense amount of apathy. Imagine playing all of this just to end it with, it was all a dream, and you wake up in a hospital in an IRL bed. What a way to kill. No, not even kill, butcher and stomp out a good well, maybe a mediocre campaign, not even a good campaign, but a slightly subpar, actually very subpar mediocre campaign. What a horrible way to take even a tiny iota of excitement and like whimsy and joy and just snuff it out. It just, why? Everyone accepted. I feel sorry for them. I left it pending because I've been very busy. But even if I could, I wouldn't go back for all the gold in the world to play what was the worst TTRPG experience I've ever had. One of the worst I've ever read personally myself too. Not the story, but like the experience. I can't imagine myself stomaching something like this. I would have been gone, dude. I would have been gone, honestly. It should be illegal to do this in a TTRPG. This should be like a DM's Guild bannable offense. I know I'm being hyperbolic, but it should be a punishment. You should be banned from running games for 10 years if you end the game on everything was a dream. Because there's nothing worse than having to deflate everything by everything was a dream kind of scenario. There's ways to do everything was a dream where it actually has a element that it played in the actual campaign itself, like some sort of a creature that was like destroying someone's dream, but even then having some sort of a way to reward players for participating in it without making it all trivial and stupid. But if nothing matters whatsoever and nothing was of consequence in the slightest, then what is the point for it in the first place? And with that, that's gonna be all our stories for today. I want to thank you very much for watching, and thanks so much for being here. If you like what I do, consider subscribing to the channel and leaving a like. Also, if the RPG Horror Stories ever goes down, or if you want to submit your own personalized horror story, email is down in the description below. I'll see you again in more Tales Tomorrow. Bye-bye.